All right, welcome everyone for our 1 year diversity chat. Thank you to all of you for sticking with us, some of you since the beginning, which is incredible. So quite a few familiar faces, but we're gonna do the usual smaller group. So you can kind of jump in if you want. Feel free to use raised hand feature. You definitely use your reactions. But if we do get into discussion and it's like, and there's a lot of discussion, we may do a queue. Please feel free to use the chat. And as always, if you have anything that you are not comfortable asking for any reason, you can direct message me. I will ask on your behalf and not identify you. With that, please remain muted when not talking, but we love when we can see you on video. And I will hand it over to the incomparable Ricky Howie.
I'm going to have to figure out how to edit that out. I have to figure that out. So yeah, welcome. 1 year of more than a year of crazy and 1 year of oh my God. So I'm kind of throwing those all together in one. And it hit me last month when we were having the chat. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for like a year. And then a couple of days later, the video that I did where I cried on Facebook Live popped up, and I was like, oh, probably need to figure out a way to delete that forever. But it was my truth at that moment, and I actually ended up watching it, and I realized that though some of the weight that I was carrying at that time, it has been released, there's still weight. So it kind of feeds into what this topic is about, is that there's still more work to be done, not only individually, but holistically all together. And that's kind of why I titled this, Don't Be the Ostrich. And I chose that because I remember in one of the first chats, we had this awakening, as you can say, of where things happen with George Floyd, and just people finding different ways to make changes in not only their lives. And I chose theater to kind of tackle things in my own way. And a lot of it was because I spent a lot of time in theater with my head in the sand, as if, saying, what problem? There's no problem. Yeah, I'm going to come audition, and I'm going to be that third person to the left that is completely insignificant unless you need a sassy Black girl to sing. Then all of a sudden, oh, we need you, Ricky. So that's kind of where a lot of it started. And I'm kind of going back to the heads in the sand because as the world is reopening and we've had all the conversations, and I know some of us have been having conversations in board meetings with friends, with different groups, that one would hope that as theaters are reopening, that there would be this plethora of opportunities for people of all different backgrounds, whether it's racial backgrounds, whether it's religious backgrounds, whether it's identity backgrounds, to be able to show up and be represented. And a lot of what I'm seeing is a lot of heads going back in the sand. I'm very much aware that we can all get very busy with, work, and now we're able to actually walk outside without fear of being attacked by the virus, consistently like we were before. And because we're able to do those things, it makes it very easy for us as individuals and companies to say, hey, we have these shows that we just have to put on in order to make up the money. But don't forget that there's still work to be done within making that money. Don't put out a statement and then, and let me preface it by saying I'm going to pick shows just out of the top of my head. So please don't be offended by the shows that I pick as illustrations, because some may come off a little odd. But if you're going to reopen and do Sound of Music, at least make sure you can diversely cast it. And by saying you're going to diversely cast Sound of Music, one, you've done the work. Two, you have the demographic to do it in. And three, you have a director and a board and production team that will back you on that. But that's not what we're seeing. Also, don't be frustrated that you have the auditions and the BIPOC community and or the marginalized communities don't show up. A lot of that has to do with the visibility of the work that you've been doing during the pandemic. A lot of it could be just people getting comfortable. I went to a baseball game and thought it was going to be crowded. I didn't bump into anybody. It was literally just pockets of people scattered around. It's going to take a while for people to kind of get back out and get comfortable. Um, but that doesn't mean stick your head back in the sand and not do anything. So I kind of wanted to, even though I just prefaced all of that, I kind of wanted to go back and look at kind of the stages of diversity that we're all going through as individuals, but also as companies, and how we can turn those different phases into action items as we continue to navigate um, the situation that we're in. So there, the three levels: you have fear, you have learning, you have growth. And a lot of you have seen all of that over all the anti-racist materials and everything that's out there. But there's some validity in those. And I'm going to start with like fear, but I'm going to change that also into shock. Because a lot of people did actions out of shock. And a lot of companies did actions and statements out of being called out. And I'll admit that, primarily by me. But a lot of them did that. Um, and those statements are great. And we have had the conversations of being accountable. You put the statements out, you say you're going to do this, you need to be visible, and you need to make sure that what you are doing, what you said you were going to do, is what you're going to do. And if you choose not to be a diverse company, that's okay. There are companies that are primarily for women. There are companies that are primarily for men. There are companies that are primarily for the LGBTQIA community. I'm not saying that every single company across the board has to be diverse, but if you're going to put a diversity statement out there saying we are accepting of everyone and all people, and we want you represented, and we want you to have a place at the table where your voice is validated and heard, you're now reopening. Make sure that statement stays true. You may go back on your website and change it. Somebody read your initial statement. Doesn't mean that your initial statement can't change. Statements can change, people change. But we just need to make sure that we are being preparative in our reopening and making sure that we have alliances and support in order to continue to do the work as we reopen and function, and not be performative. I've had to make sure I said that right. So there's preparative, which means yes, you have to do a lot of work. And then there's performative, which is okay, so we're going to do August Wilson's, piano lesson and call it a day. Or we're going to do Rent and call it a day. Or my favorite, we're going to do Ragtime and hit everybody on the spectrum and call it a day. There are those shows, but there are so many more shows. There's so many more conversations. And I just implore companies to ensure that they are pick your money makers, but pick your statement makers at the same time as you're picking your seasons, picking your shows, picking the people that work with you on those shows. You want people that aren't afraid to stand up for something. We can all lay down for anything, but standing up for something requires a lot more tenacity and a lot more energy from us. So that's part of kind of what I'm striving for in this diversity equality thing across theater. But yeah, so we started in that fear shock zone. We put out the statements, um, and we sat together in huddles and boards and just said, yes, we are going to do this. We are going to do this, and we're going to make sure that we are ready. And I'm actually, I sit on a few boards, and some of them are opening, some of them are not, but in all instances, no one's ready for the diversity part of reopening. They got the COVID thing under control. But when they get to the diversity thing, literally all of them turn around, and who are they looking at? Me. And this is just it's a blanket statement, but it's true because it's happening to me. It might not be happening to others. Please do not ladle your DEI initiatives on those that are marginalized. Yes, you want their voice. Yes, you want their input. Do not ladle them with the leading of it unless they stand up and say, hey, I want to carry this burden on through. You have to be willing to do the work and help them do the work with you, not on behalf of you. So that kind of sits in that, I'm going to call it the fear and shock zone. And I'm leaving it kind of in that fear and shock zone because of a lot of companies. It's easy to sit, as we were all sitting at home, unable to do things, and say, yes, we're going to do this. Yes, we have a plan for this. Okay, wait a minute. TJ, ask the question again. Unmute, because I'm reading it and I'm not getting it.
The phrase you meant, the phrase where you said about ladling the DEI statement.
On me. So
yeah, can you
yeah.
explain that for me, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, not a problem. If you have, and I'm just going to say in the case of me, I sit on a board where I am the sole African American. And there's one other person that's on the board that is LGBTQIA. They are now ladling us with handling all their DEI efforts, their programming, their plans for going forward. And it's not a conversation that we're having as a group. It's, well, you have this down pat, so y'all go forth and do it. And that's what I'm saying, that don't ladle. In other words, don't put the work on the marginalized communities to push forward. And also don't ignore, whether it's a marginalized community or not, don't ignore people that might come up and point out, I'm so happy that you're doing, Piano Lesson by August Wilson. It's a great thing that you're doing. And you're showing the audition table where people are signing in, and there's no one of color in the picture. It's the little tiny, itty bitty little things that speak volumes. Yes, Jaden, perfect. It really is not up to the marginalized community to change. It's the oppressors who need to change. And that's true. My husband always says, he says it all the time. He was like, the LGBTQIA community, he was like, they fight. They fight and fight and fight and fight, and they get their voice heard, and they fight for what they believe in. And he says, and he was speaking predominantly of African Americans. He said, it's not that we don't fight. We just put our heads down a lot. And we do. And that's where the whole don't be an ostrich thing comes in. I knew there were times when I was being overlooked and pushed down and didn't say anything. And I think a lot of reasons why this is kind of coming up now and don't be an ostrich is because we've all been here in these chats and in meetings at our boards and doing all these things. I don't want those of us that are doing the work to become marginalized, regardless of your race or your background, to become marginalized in the work that needs to continue to be done. Because it's even worse if Sally goes to her board and says, we need to do XYZ, and they silence her. You know, so it's for all of us to help all of us as a whole. You're welcome, TJ. I will always come up with phrases that don't sit with anyone. And then I'll listen back to the video and go, oh, that was new, even for me. But yeah, so I think a lot of being in that fear shock zone throughout, you know, the pandemic, that we're still in it somewhat, and coming out of it, it's this whole release of, I don't have to be stuck in the house. I don't have to do all this other stuff. And we all know how that felt when we were just like, oh my gosh, I can go back to work, or I can go back to theater, or I can go back to that. I'm going to throw something at you that's a little odd to help you understand when what I say about, and some of you, I know you get it, the things that you can shrug off. The world is open back up. We're back out there. We're going to auditions, we're doing shows, we're having meetings, we're building sets, we're outside, we're masked, we're unmasked, whatever. We have now been given a privilege to do that. There are privileges that we have all now been given. You can go back out there and go forth and do what you want to do. But there's still that privilege, or that weight that some of us can't get off. If I go back into an audition, and let's just say I want to be Cinderella, so I'm going to go to the Cinderella audition. I still know when I walk into the room, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to see talent walk in the room. They're going to see, oh, black girl coming. Oh, stepmother. Now, mind you, I would be a fabulous stepmother. But I'm just saying, just in terms of, those are the weights that we can't shrug off. I can't shrug that off. I can't shrug off friends wanting to come in and audition to be, help me out, TJ, Hairspray, major woman singing.
Tracy?
No, the other one.
Motormouth?
Thank you, Motormouth. I knew it started with an M. If you have a drag queen that wants to come in and audition for Motormouth, what I'm just trying to get theaters and just people to look at is the paradigm shift of how we think about humans. You have a human walking in to audition for you, or you have a human that wants to be a part of your show, whether it's in the show, whether it's directing it, whether it's working backstage, whether it's sitting in the audience. They're humans. They're not labeled by race. They're not labeled by gender. They're not labeled by religion. They're not labeled by economic means. They're just humans walking in. And that is that second phase of kind of what we're going through, which is that whole learning phase, being able to look at people for people. And it's a lot of bias uncovering and realizing that things could be done. I didn't realize until doing, you know, some of my own discovery and starting stuff with Confidence Theatrics, there was a whole group of individuals that I work with on a daily basis that I never thought of as being on stage. And that was the blind community. That was my own bias that I had to uncover and realize I have choreographed them on stage. But here they were, my coworkers coming to do my virtual online radio shows, and they were absolutely amazing. And they were just like, how can I do more of this? How can I do this? Just a whole group of individuals that I just had just kind of blocked out. And I sit next to them every day. That was a bias that I had to uncover. And, and now they're doing like, we're doing some really cool things at work with performing industrial videos. And it's all by these people that have come to do, some of the stuff that I was doing. So there was that whole learning zone that we kind of all went through. That was there. So yeah, that's a new one that just signed up, Julie. He can come in. And one of the things that also happened during the learning zone, and I'm going to use TJ as an example of this, is TJ did a lot of reading. Now, TJ loves to read anyway. I will say that. What is it, 50 books in 6 months? But TJ loves to read anyway, but he did a lot of reading just on different things, being anti-racist. I'm gonna read this book, and it's just of opening up that lens. And he's been in, I think, 1 or 2 Reclaiming the Canon chats that I've done, where literally we just take, or just one, the Into the Woods one. Yeah, that's right. Where we just literally sit around and talk about theater and how it can be changed and how you can do a show differently. And those are things that even as you are trying to reopen or whatever, you can always have those conversations, not only with your boards, but with your communities, and getting them involved with this whole discussion of evolving in this diverse space of theater. Into the Woods is not one of my favorite shows, but after that conversation, yeah, I'm like so excited to do that show. And then we had one about Streetcar Named Desire. Never seen it, never heard of it. Based on that conversation, I'm just like, oh, that's a show I would now be very interested in. So there are ways to have all these different conversations as a board, as an individual, as friends, as educational outreach opportunities that will assist the communities around you and also the people that sit with you on your boards into understanding how it doesn't have to be business as usual now that we're opening up. I really don't want us to get stuck in kind of going back to where things are as usual. And I have to find it, but I want to pose a question to you, and y'all can unmute and kind of give your feedback. But what, as your companies are reopening or reopened or in the planning phases, what are some of the things and discussions that you are having regarding diversity, if any at all? And it's okay if you're not having them, because what we can do is then come up with ways to start initiating that conversation. So who's doing what, while I pull up something to share? No one's doing anything? I can't believe that.
I can speak on behalf of PTP.
Yay, Melissa!
Hi there. So the Port Tobacco Players created a separate council, and it's the Belonging, Togetherness, Accountability Council. It's got more words in it in the title, so apologies. And they've been working on changing the structure of our play reading requirements to make sure that plays written by people of color had a better chance of being read and considered for shows. They've also been working with the board of directors to establish microaggression training and how to spot it and how to address it. And yeah, that's kind of where they're starting off. They've been working a lot with the board on changing behaviors, I guess. And yeah, so there, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I know y'all also did some stuff with y'all had wait a minute, James Englehart from Aladdin. Am I thinking the right one? Yeah, he did something with you guys.
Oh yes, we did. We had Michael James Scott, who's the
That's what it
current
was.
Aladdin on Broadway, come and he, well, not come physically, but come via Zoom. And he talked to us about his experience as a LGBTQ BIPOC member in the arts and what his experiences have been and what we can do to improve the experience of other artists in those communities. So that was a fantastic event. Highly recommend if anybody ever is looking for a guest speaker. He was so energetic.
Yeah, I was there for part of that, and then I had to go, but I was just like, oh wow, yay, good. And then y'all did Working also, which is very good, just about, even though it deals with race on a very minimal level, it does deal with classism and how that is viewed across the working field. So I was pleased to see that.
And it gave us an opportunity to have conversations, because there are aspects of that production that are not, that don't sit well with everyone, because it does have some anti-Semitic tones, some microaggressions and other things within the context. So yeah, it definitely opened up an opportunity for dialogue.
Good. And Kelsey, well, and Nathan, because I think Kelsey's probably out mowing the lawn again.
I'm not, I promise I'm here. Many people tried to stop me. So the kind of, we're from Second Star, for those who don't know us, and we really started with that statement that we released, and as a board, we keep kind of using that as a touch point. So Ricky, I really appreciate what you've been saying about the head in the sand and everything, and continuing to reflect and revise on what we put forward. And then we established an outreach committee with 2 diversity liaisons that are partnering with the board to advise and make steps in various directions across our organization. And their first recommendation to us, having interacted with our organization in the past, and I believe I'm quoting one of them ish when I say this, is fix the house before you invite guests in. So we started by, or I'm at least paraphrasing him.
I know exactly who said that. I've heard that said to me, so I know.
For our company, it was such a lovely insight, and it's been really eye-opening to really hear from them that it has to be a unique approach for each company. And in order to figure out what that is, you got to talk to your people and your volunteers and your audience. And so we released a survey to kind of the overall universe and community of anyone that interacts with us. We got a wonderful response from it that helped us guide our next steps. And the number one thing has been about transparency. And so we've been really working to make sure that we post where we are, what actions we've taken, even if they're slow and steady, because we're all volunteers, and as things reopen, it does take a little bit more time to balance work and life and everything else. And then as part of the season selection process, we've made that more transparent than ever before, and really focusing on getting community, volunteer, board, actor, all kinds of input on shows that we should be doing. And so we just published that list and we're starting on that process, but we're also opening up who's able to participate in that committee and help guide us.
And we had established goals for
The season selection
including
as well,
focusing on a diversity of authors,
and life experience and
ability to color conscious casting, that sort of thing. And we established a microaggression policy for the company as well, reporting policy that will ensure people know who they can report to. We have a process for resolution, that sort of thing as well.
So we're glad to see that the shows that were recommended kind of ran the spectrum of, yes, what we've done before and we're kind of known for is classics, and then a lot of other pieces as well that the board wants to branch out into. So we're excited for that process.
Yay! And Jaden, I saw what you wrote, because you're a music director, and no worries, you will be pulled into tons of things. I know you, so consider yourself booked. But yeah, I mean, it's all that Second Star and PTP were saying. It's all small baby steps, and you can do big things and you can do small things. And Amy, I will get to you in a second. But it all, in other words, like I've said many times, this is definitely a marathon, and I'm going to call it a triple marathon, because it's definitely more than your normal regular marathon. But we'll get there. It's like, even though we might have to go 100 miles to get to the finish line, even if we're only at 1 mile, that's better than being at 0. And the only thing I'm really excited about is the fact that we're all here having this conversation and we're not at 0. And that leads me to Sally. You guys are not at 0. It might feel that way because, okay, you tried to get a board position for DEI and it didn't succeed. Just keep the conversations going. Even if it's not a board position, the conversations speak volumes, because people listen, and they might not ingest and react, but they do hear. Naturally, people, they hear what they want to hear, and they also hear what they don't want to hear. So, but just know that it's being heard, and, you know, through the theatrical grapevine, y'all aren't on any dark list of not making anything happen. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that.
I would know if you were on a dark list of no.
Okay. Well, that's great. And I think that's part of why I'm here tonight, is to sort of keep that encouragement up, to say it's not all for naught. Eventually things will start to happen. If you keep up with the little bits of effort here and there, every little bit helps.
Yeah, and it's all about being encouraging, because the road that we're all on is, it's definitely a rough road to be on. But we will get there to that next spot, I promise. And Amy had her hand up, so Amy.
Right. Yeah, I'm relatively new to the board of Colonial Players, so I'm basically trying to put out fires left, right, and center with marketing, and I just keep getting thrown more and more, so trying to catch up on where we are at. But I know we do have someone reaching out to the colleges and reaching out to several different directions. I don't know exactly where. I'm trying to find out, but through my efforts, I'm also trying to reach out to local businesses, and especially more diverse businesses, and encourage them to be in association with us, like we're doing with Treasure Island at the moment. And the owners are, I think they're from Sri Lanka originally, but we're not asking them for money. We're literally just partnering them and helping advertise that they are there as well. So,
and yeah, and doing those partnerings, because I know I mentioned that earlier on. It was probably like a July, August chat of last year, the marketing piece. It goes a lot of different ways. When you partner with people. So let's just say there was, when I was doing stuff at St. Mark's, there was the pub that was over there. They always knew that we would come over afterwards. That's where the cast went all the time. So then all of a sudden, the people that worked there and people that we were all drinking with afterwards started coming to see the shows. And then, it just became this kind of relationship thing. It also didn't hurt that we didn't get charged for all of our drinks, but you get the picture. It was a give and take relationship that we had with them. But partnering with just different businesses, it does circle back around in different ways. And you never know if you're going to get a performer out of it, if you're going to get funds out of it, if you're going to get tech out of it, or if you're going, if you all of a sudden say, man, we're really kind of needing bar stools. Oh, we're getting rid of all of our bar stools. Just come take them. There's so many different things that can get with partnering with businesses that kind of feed back into, kind of the whole diversity bracket. So I think that's like really good. And a lot of time it's just that whole, just keep at it, and keep pushing for it. And it will definitely work itself out. I'm trying to catch, let's see, what is Laura saying?
I'll say I'll definitely push forward. They know me by now. I haven't been long, but yeah, I'm not exactly quiet.
I love that. I love that. And Laura says she's not on any boards. Yeah. And Laura, it's easy for me to say that I don't mind being the squeaky wheel or the loud one in the room. And if you ever get back into the corner, you can tell them, well, Ricky told me to say it. I have no problem being the fall guy for anyone when it comes to diversity. So feel free. But yeah, I'm hoping that a lot that comes in out of this conversation and the conversations that we have will help people just continue to really branch out and have those conversations and push and and there'll be a handout with this that'll come out this weekend. But one of the placards that I put into the handout is be the encourager. You have to be the encourager for this to go on, because we all know the world is full of plenty of critics. But yeah, be that person that can encourage a group to keep trying different avenues. And I always tell people, success, and this is just my opinion, success for me is equated to, is like, I don't know success unless I failed at something. So I'm not saying going into it for the purpose of failing, but if you try to, you're going on this diversity pattern, and let's just say, like for you, Sally, the DEI board position didn't pan out. I wouldn't call that a failure, but I guess you can. It's not a win, but that was a roadblock that you hit. It doesn't mean that it stops. You just find another avenue to get there. I look at diversity as water. It will consistently flow, and it will consistently find its way through to get where it needs to go. We just have to keep the water going, because if it dries up, we're going to be right back where we were a year ago. And I am ecstatic. I'm energized. I'm pleased. And to be quirky, I'm pleased as punch that we're just all here having these conversations and chats and things. And I'll even put it out there for all the different groups that are represented here tonight. If there is a show that you have concerns or questions about, or just want insight about, I do literally monthly chats where we're talking about reclaiming the canon. And it's not to disparage any piece. It literally is to just open up the layers for those different pieces. I'm willing to have more than one chat a month, because it's all pre-recorded, kind of like what we're doing now, but it's small groups. We can take that, bring your board. I'll bring people that I know, and we can sit down via Zoom or in person if everyone's vaccinated in the room, and we can have that conversation about what this piece means and how you can leverage this piece to build not only diversity within your company, but status just within your company of these chats, these conversations, this messaging is important. And I think a lot of companies that I'm starting to see kind of like with the heads back in the sand are stuck on, and this isn't a bad thing, it just seems to be somewhat misguided. We have to make money because we were closed. Yes, you do. We all have to make money because we were closed for so long. But are you going to put money ahead of the ethics behind what you're doing? So it's almost like saying, we're going to make money, so we're going to do, you know, I don't know. I can't think of a show that's that horrible, but you kind of get where I'm going. It's like, if you have a diversity ethical standpoint that you are standing on as a company, hopefully your show and your messaging about why you're doing these shows speaks to that. And the other piece that I would add to, and it's kind of like a whole different section, and I just had this conversation, that I'll be having it tomorrow. If you are in, and I'm gonna pick it, and it's weird. If you are sitting in an area that is predominantly non-marginalized, that's the best way for me to put it, do not throw up an August Wilson play thinking that they all of a sudden just grow out of the ground. There's a company that I'm working with in another state where they are in probably the most diverse area that I have seen a professional theater have. You could literally throw a rock and not find anyone that looks the same. And their season was not representative at all by anyone that lived in their community. Not one person. And they were like, well, no one comes to audition for our plays. I was like, okay, well, you put up Showboat and you put up Big River, and I forgot what their third one was, but I know Showboat and Big River were the two that they put up. And they had little to no people that showed up except for their friends that came from outside of the community to come in and do it. And they were like, well, no one here supports us because you're not acknowledging the community that you sit in. And a lot of that for a lot of different companies means that they literally have to examine the demographic of where they sit. Because when I worked for, not worked, but when I was working with Tantalon Community Theater, and they're not functional anymore, but I remember having the conversation with that board where they were shocked that Tantalon was predominantly African American. They were familiar with the microcosm of who looked like them and who they hung out with and who their friend circles were, that they did not realize that pretty much 90% of the community that theater sat in was African American. So we had the discussion of, we need to do shows that speak to everyone here. So we started doing shows that mixed and shows that were African American and shows that weren't. But once we started doing that mix, it completely changed. They were like, we've never seen this many people show up. I was like, you also have to do a show that speaks to the people in the community. So that's kind of part of the whole if you're going to, as we go through the stages of fear, learning, and growth, and it will be some time before we get to the growth area fully, that we have to think about those things, like what's the messaging that we want as a theater? What and how does that tie into our DEI statement if we are to have one? And how does this propel us to grow as theater makers, as community organizers? And how do we do the paradigm shift and not be so engrossed in the I have to make $50,000 to recover from COVID 2020? I think we all can make that money with the show, but we need to look at it from a casting perspective of being open, being okay to have, and I'm going to say being okay to have a Whitney Houston Cinderella type casting, or to be able to have a Hamilton-esque type casting for a particular show. I also had a group that they were having issues of wanting to do Hello Dolly, and they're just like, we don't know if we could have, a Black Dolly. And I was like, Pearl Bailey. So some of it is just doing the work, which in the simplest terms, Google. Yeah, I've talked a lot. Questions, because I don't want to keep anybody. I know we're getting close to the 8 o'clock mark, and a lot of this is just to keep people talking. But what, other than the things that we're all doing, whether we're new, if there are questions that you want to ask groups, so let's just say like Jaden and Amy, because y'all are new and you're going into, you might be asked to be with different groups. There's the whole, this is just me. I am more so when I go into a place that they know that I'm always open to whoever's there. I won't cast people that get on my nerves, but outside of that, it's open casting season for me. But I will ask the questions, and you know that, TJ, is so true. I'm like, no, I can't cast that person, they get on my nerves. But I do ask the question, it was like, so when I'm looking at someone, especially since I'm predominantly the choreographer, I look at them for the talent. And then I will ask the question, why can't they be this particular character? Is it due to, is it race? Is it because they're this? Is it because they're that? Is there a look that you're going for? Is there a look that you're trying to avoid? Is it the community that has this? You're like, those are all valid questions. And they've always been valid questions, but I think we've all been scared to ask them because we didn't want to be known as troublemakers or someone that would push the envelope or ask the wrong thing or stir the pot. I'm here to tell you the pot's been stirred. There's been a whole bunch of seasoning thrown in it. Yep. And I'm not saying, toss it out, but if it's stirred, it was like, let's just season it up and make sure that it's something that everyone can enjoy. And that's my thing of not putting our heads back in the sand and acting like there isn't a problem just because theaters reopened. The problem's not going to go away. So we just need to deal with it, not necessarily head on, but deal with it piece by piece. Jaden, I love you. It is a swimming pool. It is Olympic-sized swimming pool. But yeah, we kind of all have to be that encourager. And Julie has been mine, because trust me, there have been days when I'm like, I'm just gonna stop. I'm just not. I can't do this. was like, we started off with 80 something people and now we're down to 8. People have lives. And I get it, but just as you're encouraging others, allow yourself to be encouraged when you hit that low point and you just feel like you are alone in this world of fight. Because every roadblock that is out there is coming at every last one of us that is fighting for this change, especially in theater. It's a roadblock of, hey, I want to do a show and cast it this way, and hearing, from your artistic director, our constituents aren't going to like that, or being told by the people that fund your company that if you decide to put out a statement that your position is revoked. Like, these are things that have happened within the past year that I have seen friends lose their positions or walk away from positions because the money spoke louder than the ethical part of things. So that's kind of why I'm not the only reason why I'm fighting, but I don't want us to put our head back in the sand and assume like nothing is there. Superhero groups are small and mighty. Thank you, Julie. Now I have to go watch that. So, but yeah, so with that, anybody have any questions, affirmations, anything? Thank you, Dr. Reginald. Always great to see you. I'm gonna come to one of your hand dancing classes one day. I will get the handout ready. It pretty much has everything that we've done in the past year listed in it, and things that we say to ourselves in each of the paths to change, the fear, the learning, and the growth. So the things that we say to ourselves and the things that we can do to get out of it. And these are just some things that I've sourced from different chats that I've had, different readings. So I will finish compiling all of that, and it will be up on the website, but I will also send it to all of you along with the link of this recording so you can listen to it again if you need to, or, slide it into someone's DMs if they need to hear it. Anything else?
Just to thank you, Ricky, for keeping the conversation going. Really appreciate everything you've done so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I see your son left us. I'm so mad.
He did. He did. He's gone to greener pastures in Buffalo.
Okay.
But thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. And so thank you so much, Kelsey and everyone. And yeah, I'm excited. I can't remember what next month is. Anything you want to say, Julie? Am I missing something? I can't remember.
If you want to just, stay involved, follow Competence Theatrics. We have so many good resources, and just highly accessible. So if you want to learn something new and meet new people, that's what this is all about. I mean, I've loved getting to know several of you, and I've especially loved getting to know Ricky this year. And there's so much work to do. Like, I look at myself in the mirror and I know how much more work I have to do. And it's just, you just keep going. And that's what this is. We all just keep going together with curiosity and appreciation for each other. And that's the best we can do. So I appreciate all of you, and Ricky, I appreciate you. So it's been a year.
Well, thank you guys. Happy 1-year anniversary. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will see you all later.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too, Jay.